You have felt it before. That quiet sense that you are capable of more. More than what you are doing now. More than what people see. More than what you show. But no matter how strong that feeling is, you keep living the same way. You wake up, follow the same routine, think the same thoughts, and stay inside the same limits. Not because you have to, but because something inside you is still asleep. A part of you that knows you can do more, be more, and go further. But it never fully wakes up. It stays quiet, waiting. And slowly, you begin to accept this version of yourself as normal. But what if your limits are not real? What if they are only habits you have repeated for too long? If you are enjoying this audiobook and want to continue building real communication confidence, subscribe to this channel now. More chapters are coming, and each one will guide you step by step through mastering every conversation. There is a version of you that you have not met yet. Not because it doesn't exist, but because it has not been activated. It is not something outside you. It is already within you. A quiet strength, a deeper focus, a level of discipline and clarity that you have only touched for short moments. Maybe you have felt it once, during a time when you were fully focused, fully committed, fully present, and in that moment, everything felt different. You were sharper, stronger, more aware, but then it faded. You returned to your normal patterns, your normal limits, and that version of you became distant again. This is what happens to most people. They experience their potential in small flashes, but they never learn how to stay in it. They never learn how to awaken it fully, because they believe something that is not true. They believe their limits are real. They believe their current level is fixed. They believe they need something outside to change before they can grow. But the truth is simple. Your limits are learned. And anything learned can be unlearned. The patterns you follow, the thoughts you repeat, the habits you keep, all of these shape how far you go. And until you change them, you stay in the same place. This audiobook is not about quick motivation. It is about awakening something deeper. Something that has always been there. Something that does not depend on mood. Something that does not disappear when things feel hard. It is about stepping beyond the limits you have accepted and discovering what you are truly capable of. You do not need to become someone new. You need to wake up what is already inside you. And once you do, everything begins to change. Chapter 1. The limits you learned to accept. There was no single moment when your limits appeared. No one sat you down and told you exactly how far you could go. No one drew a clear line and said, "This is your boundary." And yet, somewhere along the way, you began to live as if that line existed. It formed slowly, in small moments, in repeated thoughts, in quiet experiences that you did not question at the time. You grew up learning what was easy and what was hard, what felt possible and what felt out of reach. Each time something felt difficult, your mind made a note. Each time something did not go as planned, your mind added another layer. This is not for me. This is too much. I can't do this. These thoughts did not arrive loudly. They came in simple ways, almost unnoticed. And because they felt true in the moment, you accepted them. You carried them forward. Over time, they became part of how you saw yourself. One day, you try something new. You feel resistance. Your mind quickly says, "You are not good at this." You step back. You avoid it next time. Another day, you face a challenge. It feels uncomfortable. Your mind says, "This is too difficult." You stop before going further. Each time this happens, something is being built. Not your ability, your limit. A quiet belief that says, "This is as far as I go." You do not notice it forming because it feels natural. It feels like reality, but it is not. It is a pattern. A pattern created by repeated experiences and repeated thoughts. And once that pattern is strong enough, it begins to guide your actions without you realizing it. You begin to choose what feels safe. You begin to avoid what feels uncertain. You begin to stay within what you already know. Not because you cannot go beyond it, but because you believe you cannot. This belief is quiet, but powerful. It shapes your decisions. It shapes your effort. It shapes how far you are willing to go before you stop. One morning, you notice something different. You are about to begin something that matters. Not something impossible, just something that requires effort. And before you start, that familiar thought appears. This might be too much. You have heard it before, many times, but this time you pause. You do not follow it immediately. You look at it, you question it, and for a moment, something feels different. Is this actually true? The question is simple, but it creates space. And in that space, the thought does not feel as strong. You realize something important. This thought has appeared before, in different situations, different moments, and each time you accepted it. Not because it was true, but because it felt true. That is the difference. Feeling is not proof. It is just a signal. And signals can be wrong. You sit with that idea for a moment. If your limits are based on thoughts that feel true, but are not always true, then what does that mean? It means your limits may not be real. It means they may be patterns that can change. This realization is quiet, but it opens something inside you. You are no longer completely certain about your limits. And that uncertainty creates possibility. Later in the day, you face another moment. Something slightly uncomfortable. Something that would normally make you step back. Your mind reacts quickly. You can't do this. But now you see it. You recognize the pattern. And instead of stopping, you do something different. You take a small step forward, not a big leap, just one step. It feels uncomfortable. Your mind still resists, but you continue. Another step, then another. And slowly, something changes. The thing that felt too much begins to feel manageable. Not easy, but possible. That moment stays with you because it shows you something real. Your limit was not where you thought it was. It was further. And you only discovered that by moving past the point where you usually stop. As the day continues, you begin to notice this pattern again and again. Moments where your mind tells you to stop. Moments where things feel too difficult. Moments where you usually step back. And each time you pause, you question, you take one more step. Not always perfectly, not always smoothly, but consistently. And each time you do this, your limit shifts. Just a little, not dramatically, but enough to notice. You begin to understand something important. Your limits are not fixed. They are flexible. They expand when you push them. They stay the same when you avoid them. And they shrink when you constantly step back. This changes how you see effort. Before, effort felt like something to avoid, something uncomfortable, something that meant you were reaching too far. Now, effort feels different. It feels like a signal that you are moving beyond your current limit. It feels like growth. Later in the evening, you sit quietly and reflect. You think about all the times you stopped too early, all the moments you believed you could not go further, and you realize something. You never actually tested your real limit. You only tested the point where you felt uncomfortable. And you treated that point as the end. But discomfort is not the end. It is the beginning of something new. It is the place where growth starts. This realization changes how you approach everything. You are no longer afraid of that feeling. You recognize it. You understand it. And you move through it. Days pass. You continue this pattern. You face challenges. You feel resistance. You hear the same thoughts. But now, they do not control you the same way. You question them. You move anyway. You take one more step, again and again. And slowly, your limits begin to change. Things that once felt difficult now feel normal. Things that once felt impossible now feel possible. Not because the world changed, but because you did. You expanded your range. You moved beyond what you had accepted before. And that creates a new sense of confidence. Not based on words, not based on ideas, but based on experience. You have seen yourself go further than you thought you could. And that changes how you see yourself. You are no longer someone who stays within limits. You are someone who explores beyond them. Later, you face a moment that feels more challenging than usual. Something that truly tests you. Your mind reacts strongly. This is too much. The thought is louder this time, more convincing. And for a moment, you feel it. The urge to stop. The urge to step back. But then something inside you responds. Not loudly, but clearly. You have felt this before. That sentence changes something, because it reminds you. This feeling is not new. It is familiar. And every time you have moved through it, you have grown. So you do not stop. You take a breath. You take one step, then another, and slowly the intensity begins to fade. Not completely, but enough to continue. And once again, you move past a point you once believed was your limit. That moment stays with you because it confirms something. Your limits are not real in the way you once believed. They are changeable. They are expandable. They are only as strong as the patterns you follow. As the night comes, you sit in silence. You think about everything. Not deeply, just clearly. You realize that for most of your life, you have been living inside limits you never questioned. Limits built from past experiences, from repeated thoughts, from habits that felt true, but now you are seeing beyond them. Not all at once, not perfectly, but step by step, and that is enough. Because once you begin to question your limits, they lose their power. Once you begin to move beyond them, they start to change. And once you understand that they are not fixed, you stop being controlled by them. You start exploring. You start expanding. You start discovering what you are actually capable of. And that is where everything begins. Not outside, not in something new, but within you. In the moment, you stop accepting your limits as final and start seeing them as something you can move beyond. Again and again, step by step, until the line you once believed in disappears completely. Chapter 2. The resistance that tries to hold you back. The moment you begin to push beyond your limits, something else appears. It is not outside you. It is inside. A quiet force that does not want you to change. At first, it is subtle, almost unnoticeable. But once you start moving forward, you begin to feel it more clearly. It shows up in small ways: a sudden lack of energy, a feeling of doubt, a thought that says, "This is too much." It does not stop you immediately. It slows you down. It makes you question yourself. It makes you hesitate. And if you are not aware of it, it brings you back to where you started. This is resistance. It is not something new. It has always been there. You just did not notice it before. Because before, you stayed within your limits. You did what felt familiar. You followed your usual patterns. And when you do that, Resistance stays quiet. It does not need to act. But the moment you try to grow, it wakes up. One morning, you notice it clearly. You are about to begin something important, something that requires effort, something that pushes you slightly beyond your comfort. And just before you start, your mind begins to speak. You can do this later. You are not fully ready. You need more time. The thoughts feel calm, reasonable, almost helpful. But something feels different now. You pause. You look at the thoughts instead of following them. And for the first time, you ask yourself, why do these thoughts appear right now? The timing is clear. They appear the moment you are about to move forward, not before, not randomly, exactly when you are about to grow. That realization changes something. These thoughts are not guiding you. They are protecting your current state. They are trying to keep you where you are, because change feels uncertain. Change requires effort. Change breaks patterns. And your mind is designed to avoid that. Not because it is against you, but because it wants to keep things stable, safe, familiar. You sit with this idea for a moment. If resistance appears every time you try to grow, then it is not a sign to stop. It is a sign that you are moving in the right direction. That thought feels new, because before, resistance felt like a warning. Now it feels like confirmation. Later in the day, you experience it again. You are working on something that matters. At first, everything feels fine. But after some time, the feeling changes. Your focus drops. Your energy fades. Your mind starts looking for something else. Something easier. Something more comfortable. You recognize it. This is resistance again. Not loud, not aggressive, just quiet pressure, trying to pull you away. Before, you would have followed it. You would have taken a break. You would have switched tasks. You would have told yourself, you will come back later. But now, you pause. You notice the pattern, and you choose something different. You stay, not because it feels good, but because you understand what is happening. You continue working slowly, without forcing speed, without expecting perfection, just steady movement. And after a few minutes, something changes. The resistance weakens, not completely, but enough to continue. This shows you something important. Resistance is strongest at the beginning. It is strongest when you are about to start, or when you are about to continue, after slowing down. But if you move through that moment, it begins to lose power. As the hours pass, you begin to see this clearly. Resistance comes in waves. It rises. It pushes. It tries to stop you. But if you stay steady, it fades. It does not last forever. It only feels strong because you usually stop when it appears. Now you are not stopping, you are moving through it. And that changes everything. You begin to understand something deeper. Resistance is not the enemy. It is part of the process. It appears because you are changing. It appears because you are stepping outside your normal patterns. It appears because you are growing. And growth always creates friction. That friction is what you feel as resistance. Later in the evening, you reflect on this. You think about how many times resistance stopped you in the past. How many times you felt doubt and believed it. How many times you felt low energy and took it as a sign to stop. And you realize something. It was not the difficulty that stopped you. It was your response to resistance. Now, that response is changing. You are no longer reacting the same way. You are observing. You are understanding. You are continuing. And that builds something strong inside you. Mental strength. Not the kind that pushes aggressively, but the kind that stays steady, that does not panic, that does not give up at the first sign of discomfort. Days pass. You continue to face resistance. It does not disappear. It still shows up in different forms, on different days. But now you are ready for it. You recognize it quickly. You do not take it personally. You do not see it as failure. You see it as part of the process. And each time it appears, you respond the same way. You pause. You notice. You continue, step by step. And each time you do this, resistance loses a little more power. Not because it goes away, but because you are no longer controlled by it. You are moving through it. One day, you face a moment where resistance feels stronger than usual. Everything feels heavy. Your mind is louder. Your energy is lower. The thought comes again. This is too much. For a moment, it feels convincing. It feels real. But then you remember. You have felt this before. Many times. And each time you continued, it passed. So you do not stop. You take a breath. You begin with a small step, then another, then another. And slowly, just like before, it fades. Not completely, but enough. Enough to keep moving. And that is all you need. You do not need to remove resistance. You just need to move through it. As the night comes, you sit quietly. You think about what you have learned, not in a complicated way, just clearly. You understand that resistance will always be there. It is part of growth. It is part of change. But it does not control you anymore. You control how you respond to it, and that gives you power. Real power. Because now, you are not waiting for the perfect moment. You are not waiting to feel ready. You are not waiting for resistance to disappear. You are acting anyway. And that is what moves you forward again and again, step by step. Beyond the limits you once believed were real. Chapter 3. The identity you choose to live by. At some point, the struggle is no longer just about action. It is no longer only about starting, continuing, or pushing through resistance. Something deeper begins to shape everything you do. Identity. Not the name you carry, not what others call you, but the quiet belief you hold about who you are. This belief is always there, even when you do not notice it. It guides your choices. It shapes your behavior. It decides what feels natural and what feels difficult. For a long time, your identity was built without awareness. It formed through repeated actions, through past experiences, through what you did and what you avoided. If you delayed often, you began to see yourself as someone who struggles with discipline. If you stopped when things felt hard, you began to believe that you are not consistent. If you stayed within your limits, you began to think that this is just who you are. These beliefs did not feel like choices. They felt like facts. And once something feels like a fact, you stop questioning it. You accept it. You live by it. One day, you notice something small but important. You are about to begin a task, and your mind says, this is not something you are good at. Before, you would have accepted that thought immediately. You would have acted based on it. You would have slowed down or avoided the task completely. But now, something is different. You pause, you look at the thought, and you ask yourself, is this who I am? Or is this what I have repeated? The question feels simple, but it opens something. Because, for the first time, you separate identity from habit. You begin to see that what you believe about yourself is not fixed. It is built. And anything built can be changed. Later in the day, you reflect on this. You think about the way you describe yourself, not out loud, but inside your mind. The quiet sentences you repeat without noticing. I am not consistent. I lose focus easily. I am not disciplined. These thoughts have been with you for a long time. They feel familiar. But now you see them differently. They are not facts. They are conclusions. Conclusions based on past behavior. And past behavior can change. That realization shifts something. Because if your identity is based on what you have done, then by changing what you do, you can change who you are. Not instantly, not in one moment, but over time, through repetition, through action. You decide something simple. You will no longer act based on your old identity. You will act based on the identity you want to build. This decision is quiet. No one sees it. No one hears it. But it changes everything. The next time you face a moment of hesitation, you feel it again. The old thought appears. This is not for you. But now you respond differently. You ask yourself, what would the person I want to become do right now? The answer is clear. They would start. They would not wait. They would not question themselves the same way. So you act, not because it feels natural, but because it aligns with the identity you are building. At first, this feels unfamiliar, even uncomfortable, because you're acting outside your usual pattern. But that is the point. You are no longer repeating your past. You are creating something new. As the day continues, you repeat this process again and again. Each time you face a choice, you do not ask how you feel. You ask who you are becoming, and you act based on that. This begins to change something inside you. Slowly, quietly. You are no longer reacting to situations based on habit. You are responding based on intention. And that creates a new pattern, a new identity. Later in the day, you face a moment where your old identity tries to return. A task feels difficult. Your focus drops, and the familiar thought appears. This is too much for you. For a second, it feels real. But now, you recognize it. You see it as part of your old pattern, not as truth. And you choose differently. You continue. Even if it feels slow, even if it feels uncomfortable. Because now, your goal is not just to complete the task. Your goal is to become someone who does not stop. That shift is powerful because it changes the purpose of your actions. You are not just working, you are shaping who you are. Each action becomes a vote for the identity you are building. If you act with discipline, you vote for being disciplined. If you stay consistent, you vote for being consistent. If you continue through resistance, you vote for being strong. And over time, these votes add up. They create evidence that changes how you see yourself. Days pass. You continue this process. You act based on your chosen identity. Not perfectly, not every time, but consistently enough to notice a difference. You begin to feel it. A shift in how you think. A shift in how you respond. A shift in what feels natural. Things that once felt difficult now feel normal. Not easy, but expected. You no longer question whether you will start. You start. You no longer debate whether you will continue. You continue because this is who you are becoming, and that changes everything. Your actions require less effort. Your decisions become clearer. Your focus becomes stronger. You are no longer fighting yourself. You are aligned. Later one evening, you sit quietly. You reflect on your journey. Not in a dramatic way, just with awareness. You see where you started. The old habits, the old thoughts, the old identity. And you see where you are now, still growing, still improving, but different. More steady, more focused, more consistent. And you realize something important. You did not change by thinking differently. You changed by acting differently. again and again, until your actions became your identity. That realization stays with you because it gives you control. Not over everything, but over yourself. You understand that you can choose who you become. Not in one decision, but in repeated actions, in small choices, in daily behavior. And once you understand that, you stop feeling stuck. You stop believing that this is just who you are. You start seeing yourself as something that can grow, something that can change, something that can expand. As time passes, your new identity becomes stronger. It feels more natural, more stable. You no longer have to remind yourself constantly. You simply act, and your actions reflect who you are becoming. It removes resistance. It removes doubt, because you are no longer trying to do something. You are being someone. And once you become that person, everything follows. Your discipline, your focus, your consistency, your growth, all of it becomes part of you. Not forced, not temporary, but real. Because success is not something you achieve once. It is something you become through the identity you choose and the actions you repeat every single day. Chapter 4: The Focus You Never Trained. For a long time, you believed your problem was effort. You thought you needed more motivation, more discipline, more energy. You believed that if you just tried harder, everything would change. But as you continued this journey, something became clear. The real problem was not effort, it was focus. Not the kind of focus you feel for a few minutes when something is new and interesting. Not the short bursts of attention that come and go. Real focus. The ability to stay with one thing, without drifting, without switching, without needing constant stimulation. And when you look closely, you realize something. You never trained that. You expected yourself to focus, but you never built the ability. One day, you notice it clearly. You sit down to work. You begin. For a few minutes, everything feels fine. Then slowly, your attention starts to move. A thought appears. Then another. Your mind drifts. You reach for something else. A distraction, something quick, something easy. Before, this felt normal. You would move from one thing to another without thinking. But now you pause. You notice it. And for the first time, you ask yourself, why is it so hard to stay with one thing? The question stays with you, and the answer begins to form. Because you are not used to it. You have trained your mind to switch, to move, to seek something new every few minutes. You have trained it to avoid stillness, to avoid effort that requires deep attention. And now, when you ask it to focus, it resists. Not because it cannot focus, but because it has not been trained to. That realization changes something. You stop seeing your lack of focus as a weakness. You start seeing it as a skill you have not built yet. and skills can be trained. Later in the day, you try something different. You sit down again. You choose one task, just one, and you make a simple decision. You will stay with it. Not for hours, not for a long time, just for a short, clear period. You begin. At first, it feels normal. But soon, the resistance appears. Your mind starts to move. It looks for something else, something easier, something more interesting. The urge is strong, almost automatic. But this time, you do not follow it. You stay. You bring your attention back, again and again. Each time it drifts, you return. Not with frustration, not with pressure, just with awareness. And slowly, something begins to change. Your mind settles, not completely, but enough to continue. You begin to feel a different kind of focus. Not intense, not forced, but steady, and that feels new. As the minutes pass, you stay with the task. You do not switch. You do not reach for distraction. You continue. And when you stop, you notice something. You did more in that short time than you usually do in a longer, distracted period. That shows you something important. Focus multiplies your effort. Without focus, even hard work feels slow. With focus, even simple work becomes powerful. As the days pass, you begin to train this. Not perfectly, not every moment, but consistently. You choose one task. You stay with it. You bring your attention back when it drifts, again and again. And slowly, your ability to focus improves. Not suddenly, but steadily. You notice it in small ways. You stay with tasks longer. You get distracted less often. You recover your attention faster. These changes are quiet, but they are real. Later in the day, you face a more difficult moment. You feel tired. Your energy is low. And your mind becomes more restless. This is when focus feels hardest. This is when you usually give up. But now, you understand something. Focus is not about feeling perfect. It is about returning your attention, even when it is difficult. So you try, you sit, you begin. Your mind drifts quickly, again and again. But each time, you bring it back. Not perfectly, not smoothly, but consistently. And even in that imperfect effort, something builds. You are training your mind. You are building control over your attention. And that control is powerful, because where your attention goes, your energy follows. And where your energy goes, your results are created. As the evening comes, you reflect on this. You realize how much of your time you used to lose. Not because you were not working, but because you were not focused. You were switching, drifting, dividing your attention. And that made everything slower. Now you are changing that. You are learning to stay. to go deeper, to give your full attention to one thing at a time. And that changes your experience. Work feels clearer. Your mind feels less scattered. Your progress feels more real. Days pass. You continue this practice. Some days are better than others. Some days your focus is strong. Some days it is weak. But you do not stop. You keep training. You keep returning your attention. And over time, your focus becomes stronger, more stable, more natural. You no longer feel the need to switch constantly. You are comfortable staying with one thing, and that gives you an advantage. Because most people don't build this. They stay distracted. They move quickly, but without depth. But you are different now. You are going deeper. You are staying longer. You are doing real work. Later, one night, you sit quietly. You think about everything you have learned, and something becomes clear. Your limits were not only physical, they were mental. They were in your attention, in your ability to stay with something. And now you are expanding that. You are building focus. And that allows you to go further, to do more, to become more. Because once you control your attention, you control your direction. And once you control your direction, you control your growth. You are no longer scattered. You are focused. And that focus becomes your strength. Not loud, not visible, but powerful. Because it allows you to do what most people cannot. Stay, work, continue, until the result is real. And that is what moves you beyond your limits. Not just effort, not just motivation, but focused, consistent action, again and again, until it becomes part of who you are. Chapter 5. The energy you keep wasting. For a long time, you believed your problem was time. You told yourself you did not have enough of it. You thought that if you had more hours, more space, more freedom, you would finally do what you need to do. But as you started to change, something became clear. You did not need more time. You needed to stop wasting your energy. Because even when you had time, you were not always using it well. You were tired without doing much. You were distracted without realizing it. You were thinking more than acting. And slowly, your energy was being drained by things that did not move you forward. One day, you notice it clearly. You sit down to work. You have time. Nothing is stopping you. But after a few minutes, you feel tired. Not physically, mentally. Your mind feels heavy. Your focus drops. You feel the urge to stop. Before, you would have accepted that. You would have said, "I'm just tired today." But this time, you pause. You look closer. And you ask yourself, where did my energy go? The question feels simple, but it reveals something important. Your energy was not lost in one moment. It was used up in many small ways. Earlier in the day, you spent time thinking about things that did not matter. You replayed conversations. You worried about things that had not happened. You switched between tasks. You distracted yourself again and again. None of these felt heavy at the time, but together they drained you. They took your focus. They took your clarity. They took your energy. And now, when it is time to do something important, you feel empty. That realization changes something. You stop seeing tiredness as something random. You start seeing it as a result of how you used your energy. Later in the day, you begin to notice your patterns more closely. You notice how often your mind drifts, how often you think without purpose, how often you give your attention to things that do not matter. And each time, you see the cost. A little energy lost, a little focus gone, a little clarity reduced. Before, this felt normal. Now, it feels different. Because you are aware. And awareness changes everything. You begin to make small adjustments. When your mind starts to drift, you bring it back. When you catch yourself overthinking, you pause. When you feel the urge to distract yourself, you question it. Not in a strict way, not with pressure, just with awareness. And slowly, your energy begins to stay with you. You are not losing it as easily. You are not scattering it in every direction. You are keeping it, and that makes a difference. Later, you sit down to work again. Same task, same time. But this time, it feels different. Your mind is clearer. Your focus is stronger. You are not forcing yourself the same way. You are simply working. And you realize something important. Energy is not only about rest. It is about how you use your attention. If your attention is scattered, your energy disappears. If your attention is focused, your energy stays. That changes how you see everything. You are no longer trying to manage your time. You are managing your energy. And that is more powerful. As the days pass, you continue this practice. You notice where your energy goes. You notice what drains you. You notice what helps you stay clear. You begin to avoid unnecessary thinking. Not by forcing your mind to be quiet, but by not following every thought. You begin to reduce distractions. Not completely, but enough to stay focused. You begin to stay with your work longer, without switching, without breaking your attention. And slowly, your energy builds. You feel less tired. Not because you are doing less, but because you are wasting less. That is the difference. You are using your energy with intention. Later in the day, you face a moment where your old pattern tries to return. You feel the urge to check something, to switch tasks, to move away from what you are doing. It feels small, harmless. But now you recognize it. You know what it leads to. You know it breaks your focus. You know it drains your energy. So, you pause. You do not follow it. You stay. And that small decision protects your energy. You continue your work, and you feel the difference. Your mind stays clear. Your progress continues. You are not starting over again and again. You are moving forward. That creates momentum, not fast, but steady. And steady energy creates steady results. As the evening comes, you reflect on your day. You notice how different it felt. Not because you worked more, but because you worked with more focus, with more clarity, with less waste. You realize that most of your exhaustion before was not from doing too much. It was from doing too little, with too much distraction. Now, you are changing that. You are doing what matters, with full attention, and that makes everything more effective. Days pass. You continue to protect your energy. You are not perfect. There are still moments where you drift, moments where you get distracted. But now, you recover faster. You notice it sooner. You return your focus quickly, and that keeps your energy stable. You are no longer losing entire hours. You are no longer wasting full days. You are staying present. You are staying focused. You are staying in control. That changes how you feel. You feel more capable, more clear, more steady, because your energy is not scattered. It is directed, and directed energy creates real progress. Later one night, you sit quietly. You think about everything, and something becomes clear. You always had enough time. You just did not have control over your energy. Now you are building that control. You are choosing where your attention goes. You are choosing what deserves your focus. You are choosing what you follow and what you let go. And that gives you power, real power, because your results are not based on how much time you have. They are based on how well you use your energy. And now you are using it better, step by step, day by day. You are becoming someone who doesn't waste energy on things that do not matter. Someone who stays focused on what does. Someone who moves forward with clarity. And that changes everything, because when your energy is clear, your actions become stronger. Your progress becomes faster. Your limits begin to disappear, and you move beyond them. Not by force, but by focus, by awareness, by using what you already have in the right way, again and again, until it becomes part of who you are. Chapter 6. The Discipline of Staying When It Gets Hard. At the beginning, everything feels new. There is energy. There is movement. There is a sense that something is changing. You start strong. You push forward. You feel like you are finally moving beyond your limits. But then, something shifts. The excitement fades. The work becomes heavier. the progress slows down, and this is where the real test begins. Not at the start, not when everything feels possible, but in the middle, when things are no longer new, when results are not immediate, when effort feels repeated. One day, you notice it clearly. You sit down to continue your work, the same work you have been doing. Nothing has changed, but your feeling has. It feels harder now. Not because the task is different, but because the energy is gone. Your mind speaks quietly. This is too much. Maybe you should take a break. You have already done enough. The thoughts feel calm, reasonable, almost helpful. But something inside you recognizes them. This is the moment where most people stop. Not because they cannot continue, but because it no longer feels good. Before, you would have followed that feeling. You would have slowed down. You would have taken a break. And slowly, that break would become distance. That distance would become delay. And eventually, you would stop. But now, you pause. You sit with the feeling. You do not react immediately. You ask yourself a simple question. Is this actually too much, or does it just feel that way? The question creates space, and in that space, the feeling becomes clearer. It is not that the task is impossible. It is just that it is uncomfortable. And discomfort is something you are still learning to handle. That realization changes something. You stop seeing discomfort as a sign to stop. You start seeing it as part of the process. Later in the day, you face the same feeling again. You continue your work. Your energy is still low. Your mind still resists. But now, you do something different. You stay. Not because you feel strong, but because you have decided not to leave when things get hard. At first, it feels slow. Your focus is not perfect. Your progress is not fast. But you continue. One step, then another. And slowly, something begins to change. Not your energy, not your mood, but your ability to stay. You are building endurance. The ability to remain in the process, even when it is not comfortable. This is different from motivation. Motivation pushes you to start. Endurance keeps you going. And endurance is what creates results. As the hours pass, you begin to understand this more deeply. The hardest part is not the work itself. It is staying with it long enough to see results. And most people don't do that. They start, they try, but they leave when it gets hard. And because they leave early, they never see what happens if they stay. Now, you are doing something different. You are staying. And that changes everything. Later in the evening, you reflect on this. You think about how many times you stopped too early in the past. How many times you left when things became uncomfortable. How many times you never reached the point where progress becomes visible. And you realize something. You were never far from results. You just did not stay long enough. That realization is powerful because it shows you that the path was always there. You just did not walk it fully. Now, you are changing that. You are staying, even when it feels slow, even when it feels difficult, even when nothing seems to be happening. Days pass. You continue this pattern. You show up. You begin. And most importantly, you stay. Not perfectly, not without struggle, but consistently. You face resistance. You feel discomfort. You experience doubt, but you do not leave. You remain in the process, and over time, something begins to shift. The work that once felt heavy starts to feel normal. The discomfort becomes familiar. Not easy, but manageable. You are no longer surprised by it. You expect it. And because you expect it, it does not stop you. That is the difference. You are not reacting to difficulty. You are prepared for it. Later one day, you face a moment that feels more challenging than usual. Everything feels harder. Your mind is louder. Your energy is lower. And the thought returns. This is too much. But now, you recognize it immediately. You have seen this before. You know this feeling. And you know what happens if you stop. So you choose differently. You take a breath. You begin again. Not from the start, from where you are. You continue, even if it is slow, even if it is not perfect. And slowly, the moment passes, just like before. That shows you something important. No feeling lasts forever. Not discomfort, not resistance, not even doubt. They rise, they peak, and they fade. But only if you do not stop, only if you stay. As the night comes, you sit quietly. You think about everything, and something becomes clear. Your strength is not in how fast you move. It is in how long you stay, because staying builds depth. Staying builds skill. Staying builds results. And now you are building that, step by step, day by day. You are no longer someone who leaves when things get hard. You are someone who stays, someone who continues, someone who moves through discomfort instead of avoiding it. And that changes everything, because success is not built on easy days. It is built on the days where it would be easier to stop, but you do not. It is built on the moments where you choose to stay, even when it is hard, again and again, until it becomes who you are. And once it becomes who you are, nothing can stop you for long, because you will always return. You will always continue. You will always stay. No matter how it feels, no matter how long it takes, because now you understand something clearly. The real power is not in starting, it is in staying. And that is what takes you beyond your limits. Chapter 7. The Comfort That Keeps You Small. At first, comfort feels harmless. It feels like something you deserve. A break after effort. A pause after work. A moment where you can relax and not think too much. There is nothing wrong with comfort on its own. But over time, something changes. Comfort stops being a choice. It becomes a habit. And when it becomes a habit, it begins to control you. Not loudly, not in a way you immediately notice, but in quiet, repeated ways that slowly shape your life. One day, you begin to see it clearly. You wake up, and there is nothing urgent. No pressure, no strong reason to act quickly. Everything feels calm. Your mind speaks softly. You can take it easy today. It sounds reasonable. It sounds deserved. And for a moment, you accept it. You move slowly. You delay your start. You tell yourself you will begin later. Hours pass. Nothing significant happens. You are not doing anything wrong. But you are not moving forward either. And that is where comfort becomes dangerous. Not because it hurts you immediately, but because it keeps you in the same place. Later in the day, you notice something. You had time. You had the ability. But you did not act, not because you could not, but because you chose comfort instead. That realization feels different. It is not heavy, but it is clear. Comfort is not always rest. Sometimes it is avoidance. You sit quietly for a moment and think about it. How many times have you chosen comfort instead of growth? How many times have you delayed something important because it felt easier to relax? How many times have you stayed in a familiar place because it felt safe? The answers are not loud, but they are real. And once you see them, you cannot ignore them. The next day, you face the same pattern again. A moment where you can either act or delay. Your mind offers the same option. Take it easy. But this time, you pause. You ask yourself a simple question. Is this rest or is this avoidance? The question creates clarity because rest feels different. Rest is intentional. It helps you recover. It prepares you to continue. Avoidance feels comfortable in the moment, but it delays what matters. And you begin to see the difference. You choose to act, not because you feel strong, but because you understand what is happening. You begin your work slowly, without force, but with intention. And that breaks the pattern. As the day continues, you notice how often comfort tries to pull you back. Small moments, small choices. You feel the urge to check something unnecessary, to delay a task, to switch to something easier. Before, these felt normal. Now you see them as decisions. And each decision matters. Each time you choose comfort over growth, you stay the same. Each time you choose growth over comfort, you move forward. That is the difference. Later in the day, you face a stronger moment. You feel tired, Your energy is low, and your mind speaks again. You have done enough. This time, it feels more convincing. Because you are actually tired. And for a moment, you consider stopping. But then, you ask yourself again, is this real rest, or am I avoiding something? You look closely. You realize that you are not completely exhausted. You still have the ability to continue, even in a small way. So you make a simple decision. You will do a little more. Not everything. Not something big. Just one more step. And you take it. That step feels small, but it matters. Because it shows you that you are not controlled by comfort anymore. You are choosing your actions, not your feelings. As the days pass, this awareness grows stronger. You begin to see comfort differently. You no longer see it as something to follow automatically. You see it as something to question, something to understand. You begin to use comfort intentionally. You rest when you need to. You recover when you are truly tired. But you do not escape into comfort. You do not use it to avoid effort. That balance changes everything. You are not forcing yourself constantly. But you are also not stopping without reason. You are moving with awareness. Later, one evening, you reflect on this. You think about how much time you lost before, not in big ways, but in small moments. Moments where you chose what felt easy instead of what mattered. And those small moments added up. They shaped your days. They shaped your results. Now, you're changing that, one decision at a time. You are choosing growth more often. You are choosing action more often. And that creates progress. Not instantly, but steadily. Days turn into weeks, and something begins to shift. What once felt uncomfortable starts to feel normal. What once felt like effort starts to feel expected. You are no longer pulled by comfort the same way. You are stable. You are clear. You know when to rest. You know when to continue. And that gives you control. Later one day, you face a situation that once would have stopped you completely. You feel low energy, low motivation, and a strong urge to do nothing. But now, you respond differently. You do not fight the feeling. You do not ignore it. You simply choose a small action, one step, and that step leads to another. And slowly, you move forward again. That shows you something powerful. You do not need to feel perfect to act. You just need to choose not to stay in comfort too long. As the night comes, you sit quietly. You think about everything you have learned, and something becomes clear. Comfort is not the problem. Uncontrolled comfort is. When you follow comfort without awareness, it keeps you small. It keeps you in the same place. It keeps you from growing. But when you control it, when you choose when to rest and when to act, it becomes useful. It supports you. instead of stopping you. Now, you are building that control. You are no longer reacting automatically. You are choosing intentionally. And that changes everything. Because growth does not happen in comfort. It happens just outside it, in the moments where you choose to move forward, even when it feels easier to stay where you are, again and again, step by step. You move beyond what is comfortable, and that is how you expand. That is how you grow. That is how you go beyond your limits. Not by force, not by pressure, but by choosing not to stay where it is easy and continuing even when it is not. Chapter 8. The fear you keep avoiding. There is something that appears every time you try to go further. It does not always look the same. Sometimes it is quiet. Sometimes it is strong. Sometimes it hides behind other thoughts. But it is always there. Fear. Not the kind that stops you from danger. The kind that stops you from growth. For a long time, you did not call it fear. You called it hesitation. You called it doubt. You called it not the right time. But now you're starting to see it clearly. One day, you face a moment that matters. Something important. Something that requires you to step forward. Not a big leap. Just a step beyond what you usually do. And just before you act, you feel it. A tightening inside you. A quiet tension. Your mind begins to speak. What if this goes wrong? What if you fail? What if this is not for you? The thoughts come quickly. They feel real. They feel convincing. And for a moment, you stop. This has happened many times before. You reached this point. You felt this fear. And you stepped back. Not because you could not continue, but because it felt safer not to try. Now something is different. You pause. You do not run from the feeling. You stay with it. And you ask yourself, what exactly am I afraid of? The question feels simple, but it brings clarity. You look closer. You see that the fear is not about the action itself. It is about the outcome. The possibility of failure. The possibility of not doing well. The possibility of being wrong. And when you see that, something shifts. Because you realize something important. You are not afraid of doing. You are afraid of what might happen after. That realization changes your perspective. You have been avoiding action, not because of the action, but because of imagined results. Results that have not even happened. Later in the day, you face the same moment again. The same feeling. The same thoughts. But now, you see them clearly. You recognize the pattern. And instead of stepping back, you do something different. You take a small step forward, not a big one. Just enough to move. The fear is still there. It does not disappear. But it does not stop you. You act while feeling it. And that changes everything. Because for the first time, you are not waiting for fear to go away. You are moving with it. That moment feels different. Not comfortable, but powerful. As the day continues, you begin to understand something deeper. Fear does not need to be removed. It needs to be understood. It appears when something matters. It appears when you step outside your normal range. It appears when you are about to grow. And because of that, it feels intense. But intensity does not mean danger. It just means change. Later in the evening, you sit quietly and reflect. You think about all the times fear stopped you, all the opportunities you avoided, all the actions you delayed, and you realize something. Fear was not protecting you. It was limiting you. Not because it was wrong, but because you listened to it without questioning it. Now you are changing that. You are not ignoring fear. You are not fighting it. You are facing it, and that makes a difference. Days pass. You continue this pattern. You feel fear. You notice it. You act anyway. Not perfectly, not without hesitation, but consistently. And each time you do this, something changes. The fear becomes more familiar, less overwhelming. You begin to understand it. You begin to expect it. And because you expect it, it doesn't control you the same way. Later one day, you face a moment that feels bigger than usual. Something that truly pushes you. Your mind reacts strongly. This is too much. This could go wrong. The fear is louder this time, stronger. For a moment, it feels overwhelming. But then you pause. You breathe. And you remember. You have felt this before. Many times. And each time you moved through it, you were fine. So you do not step back. You take a step forward. Then another. The fear stays. But it changes. It becomes less sharp, less controlling. And slowly, it fades into the background. That moment stays with you because it shows you something real. Fear loses power when you face it. Not when you avoid it, not when you wait for it to disappear, but when you move through it. As the days continue, you build this habit. You stop running. You stop delaying. You stop avoiding. You face what feels uncomfortable, step by step. And each step expands your range. Things that once felt impossible now feel manageable. Things that once felt overwhelming now feel normal. Not because they changed, but because you did. Later in the night, you sit quietly. You think about everything, and something becomes clear. Fear will always be there. It will appear in new forms, at new levels, as you grow. But now you understand it. You are not controlled by it. You do not see it as a stop sign. You see it as a signal that you are stepping into something new, something important, something that will move you forward. And that changes everything. Because now when fear appears, you do not step back. You step forward, again and again, until what once scared you becomes something you can handle. And once you reach that point, your limits begin to disappear. Because fear was one of the things holding them in place. And now, you are moving beyond it. Not by force, not by ignoring it, but by facing it, understanding it, and continuing anyway, step by step, beyond what once stopped you, into what you are capable of becoming. Chapter 9. The Patience. Most people never build. At the beginning, you want results quickly. You want to see change. You want proof that what you are doing is working. That is natural. When you put in effort, you expect something in return. Something visible, something clear. But as you continue this journey, something becomes obvious. Real change does not happen quickly. Not in a way you can see every day. Not in a way that gives you constant proof. It happens slowly, quietly, in small shifts that are easy to miss. And this is where most people stop. Not because they are doing the wrong thing, but because they do not see results fast enough. One day, you notice this clearly. You have been consistent. You have been showing up. You have been doing the work. But when you look at your results, they do not feel big. They do not feel impressive. They do not match the effort you have put in. Your mind begins to speak. Is this even working? Maybe this is not enough. Maybe you need to change something. The thoughts feel reasonable because you want progress. You want to see growth. But now you pause. You do not react immediately. You sit with the question. And you look deeper. You realize something important. You are measuring progress too quickly. You are looking at small time frames and expecting big results. But real growth does not work that way. It builds slowly, layer by layer. And most of it happens without being visible at first. That realization changes something. You stop looking for daily proof. You start trusting the process. Later in the day, you continue your work. Nothing feels different. No sudden improvement. No clear result. But you keep going. Not because you see immediate progress, but because you understand that progress takes time. As the days pass, you begin to notice this pattern more clearly. You work. You stay consistent. But the visible results remain small. And your mind continues to test you. Is this worth it? Should you keep going? This is where patience becomes important. Not passive waiting. Active patience. The ability to continue without needing constant results. You begin to build that step by step. Each day you show up. Each day you do the work. Even when nothing feels different. And slowly, something changes. Not in your results, but in your mindset. You become calmer. You stop rushing. You stop expecting everything to happen quickly. You begin to understand that time is part of the process, not something to fight. Later one evening, You sit quietly and reflect. You think about everything you have done. And you realize something. Even though the results are not big yet, you have changed. Your habits are stronger. Your focus is better. Your discipline is more stable. These are real changes, even if they are not visible on the outside. That realization builds trust. Trust in your actions. Trust in your process. Trust that what you are doing will lead somewhere. Days turn into weeks. Weeks turn into months. And something begins to shift. The results you were waiting for start to appear. Not suddenly. Not all at once, but gradually. You notice small improvements. Things feel easier. Your work becomes better. Your progress becomes clearer. And when you look back, the difference is obvious. But it was not obvious day by day. It was only visible over time. That is the power of patience. It allows you to continue long enough to see results. Later one day, you face a moment where your old pattern tries to return. You feel frustrated. You want faster results. You want more progress. The thought appears again. This is too slow. But now you recognize it. You understand where it comes from. And you respond differently. You remind yourself, slow progress is still progress. That thought calms you. It brings you back to the present. It keeps you moving. You continue your work. Not with urgency, not with pressure, but with consistency. And that is what matters. As time passes, patience becomes part of you. You no longer expect quick results. You no longer rush the process. You focus on what you can control. Your actions, your effort, your consistency. And you let time do its part. This changes everything. Because now, you're not stopping early. You are not quitting when results are slow. You are staying long enough to see what happens. And that gives you an advantage. Because most people do not stay. They leave too soon. They stop before results appear. They never see the outcome of their effort. But you are different now. You are patient, not in a passive way, but in an active way. You continue, even when it feels slow, even when it feels uncertain. And that creates results. Later in the night, you sit quietly. You think about everything. And something becomes clear. Patience is not about waiting. It is about continuing without seeing immediate proof. It is about trusting your actions. It is about staying in the process, again and again, until results appear. And once you build that, nothing can stop you. Because you are not controlled by time. You are working with it. You are allowing growth to happen naturally, at its own pace. And that is what takes you beyond your limits. Not speed, not pressure, but steady, patient action, again and again, until what once felt far away becomes something real, something you have built, step by step, over time. Chapter 10. The Standard You Refuse to Lower. There comes a point where everything you have been building begins to settle into something stable. Your habits are stronger. Your focus is clearer. Your discipline is more consistent. You are no longer starting from zero every day. You are continuing from where you left off. But this is also where a new challenge appears. Not resistance, not fear, something quieter, something more subtle. The temptation to lower your standard. It does not appear as something negative. It feels reasonable. It feels justified. One day, you notice it clearly. You wake up. You feel slightly tired. Not exhausted. Just not at your best. Your mind speaks softly. You can do less today. You have already done enough before. It's okay to slow down. The thoughts feel calm. They do not sound like excuses. They sound like permission. And for a moment, you consider it. Because you have been working hard. You have been consistent. You feel like you deserve a break. And maybe you do. But something inside you pauses. You ask yourself a simple question. Is this rest, or is this lowering my standard? The question changes everything. Because now, you are not just thinking about what feels right. You are thinking about what aligns with who you are becoming. You sit with the feeling. You look at your energy. You realize that you are not truly exhausted. You still have the ability to act. Maybe not at full speed, but enough to continue. And that is when you see the truth. This is not about rest. This is about comfort. And comfort is trying to pull you back. Not all the way. Just a little. Just enough to lower your effort. Just enough to slow your progress. Just enough to break your consistency. And that is how standards are lost. Not in one big moment, but in small decisions, small adjustments, small compromises. Later in the day, you face another moment. A task that requires focus. You begin. But after some time, your attention drops. Your mind starts to wander. And the thought appears again. This is enough. You can stop here. Before, you would have listened. You would have ended early. You would have told yourself, you will continue later. But now you pause. You recognize the pattern. You see what is happening. And you respond differently. You ask yourself, what does my standard require right now? The answer is clear. To continue. Even if it is not perfect. Even if it is not fast. So you stay, you continue. One step, then another. And that decision keeps your standard intact. As the days pass, you begin to understand something important. Your standard is not something you set once. It is something you protect daily, through your actions, through your decisions, through the way you respond when it is easier to do less. Because lowering your standard does not feel dramatic. It feels small. It feels harmless. But over time, those small changes add up. They shape your habits. They shape your identity. They shape your results. And if you are not aware, they slowly bring you back to where you started. Now, you are not allowing that. You are paying attention. You are protecting what you have built. Later one evening, you reflect on this. You think about how easy it is to fall back. Not completely, but gradually. One small compromise, then another, until your consistency breaks. And you realize something. It is not the big mistakes that stop progress. It is the small ones. The ones you justify. The ones you ignore. The ones that slowly lower your standard. That realization makes you more aware, more careful, not in a fearful way, but in a focused way. You begin to notice your decisions more clearly. You notice when you are about to do less than you know you can. You notice when you are about to stop earlier than you should. And each time, you pause. You choose differently. You stay. You continue. You follow your standard. Not perfectly, but consistently. Days pass. This becomes part of you. You are no longer easily pulled by comfort. You are no longer quick to reduce your effort. You are steady. You are clear. You know what is expected of you. And you meet it, even on days when it feels harder, even on days when you feel less energy. Because your standard is not based on your mood. It is based on your commitment. Later one day, you face a moment that truly tests this. You feel tired. Your mind is slower. Your focus is not strong. And the thought appears again. You can take it easy. This time, it feels stronger, more convincing, because your energy is low. But again, you pause. You do not react immediately. You look deeper. You ask yourself, can I still do something? The answer is yes. Not everything, but something. So you act. You do a small part, then another, and slowly you move forward, not at full speed, but with consistency. And that matters more, because your standard is not about perfection. It is about showing up. It is about continuing. It is about not lowering what you expect from yourself. As the night comes, you sit quietly. You think about everything, and something becomes clear. Your standard is your foundation. It holds everything together. Your discipline, your focus, your consistency. Without it, everything becomes unstable. With it, everything becomes steady. And now you are building that foundation stronger, day by day, through small decisions, through consistent action. You are no longer someone who adjusts your effort based on how you feel. You are someone who follows a standard. And that changes everything. Because once your standard is strong, your results follow. Not immediately, not all at once, but steadily. And steady progress is what lasts. You are no longer starting over. You are building forward. And that is the difference. Because success is not about what you do once. It is about what you do consistently. And that consistency comes from the standard you refuse to lower. Again and again, no matter how you feel, no matter how slow it seems, you stay true to it. And that is what takes you beyond your limits. Not effort alone, not motivation, but a standard that does not change. A standard you protect every single day. Chapter 11. When it all starts to compound. For a long time, your progress felt slow. You were working. You were showing up. You were staying consistent. But the results did not feel big. They did not feel equal to your effort. And that tested your patience. That tested your belief. But now, something begins to change. Not suddenly, not in a loud way, but in a way that you can feel. Your effort starts to add up. Your actions begin to connect. Your progress begins to build on itself. This is where compounding begins. At first, it is hard to notice, because each day still feels similar. You wake up. You do your work. You continue your routine. Nothing feels dramatic. But something is different. The work feels smoother. Your focus lasts longer. Your resistance is lower. And your results begin to improve. Not in one big moment, but in many small ones. One day, you notice it clearly. You are doing something that once felt difficult. Something that required effort. Something that used to slow you down. And now, it feels easier. Not easy, but easier. You do not struggle the same way. You do not hesitate as much. You simply begin and continue. That moment is small, but it shows you something important. Your past effort is working. Everything you did before is now supporting you. That is compounding. Later in the day, you experience it again. You start a task, and you move through it with more clarity, more speed, more confidence. Not because you changed today, but because of what you built over time. Each day you showed up. Each moment you stayed consistent. Each time you pushed through resistance, all of that is now working together. And that creates momentum. Momentum feels different. It is not forced. It is not something you push. It carries you. It helps you continue. Because now you are not starting from zero. You are building on what already exists. Before, every day felt like a fresh start. Now, every day feels like a continuation, and that changes everything. As the days pass, this feeling grows stronger. Your actions feel more connected. Your progress feels more real. You are no longer working without seeing results. You are seeing the effects of your consistency. Not all at once, but gradually. Later one evening, you sit quietly and reflect. You think about where you started, the confusion, the hesitation, the lack of direction. And then you look at where you are now, more focused, more disciplined, more clear, and you realize something. This did not happen in one moment. It happened over time, through repeated action, through consistency, through staying when it was hard. That is compounding. It takes small efforts and turns them into real results. But only if you continue long enough. That is why most people never experience it. They stop too early. They leave before their effort builds. They never reach the point where things start to connect. Now, you are there, and it feels different. You feel more confident, not because you are guessing, but because you have proof. You have seen yourself improve. You have felt the change. And that builds trust. Trust in your process. Trust in your actions. Trust that if you continue, things will keep improving. Later in the day, you face a moment that would have stopped you before. A challenge. A task that requires effort. Before, this would have felt heavy. Now, it feels manageable. You approach it calmly. You begin, you continue, and you complete it. That shows you something. Your capacity has grown. You can handle more. You can go further, not because the task changed, but because you changed. And that is the result of compounding. It builds your ability over time. It expands what you can handle. It increases what you can do. As time passes, you begin to rely on this. Not in a careless way, but in a confident way. You know that your effort is not wasted. You know that each day matters. You know that everything you do is building something, even when you do not see it immediately. That belief keeps you steady. It keeps you consistent. It keeps you moving forward. Because now you understand something clearly. You are not working for today. You are building for the future. And the future is shaped by what you do repeatedly. Later at night, you sit in silence. You think about everything, and something becomes clear. The reason things feel different now is not because of one big change. It is because of many small changes, each one adding up, each one building on the last. That is how real progress happens, not in sudden jumps, but in steady growth. And once it starts to compound, it becomes powerful. Because now your effort multiplies. It does not just add, it builds. One step leads to another. One improvement leads to the next. And over time, the difference becomes clear. You are no longer where you started. You are far beyond it. And that distance was created by consistency, by patience, by staying in the process. As the night ends, you feel something simple. Clarity. You understand that you do not need to rush. You do not need to force results. You just need to continue, because now your effort is working for you. It is building something real, something strong, something that grows over time. And that changes everything. Because once your actions start to compound, your limits begin to disappear. Not all at once, but step by step, as your effort builds, as your progress grows, as you continue, again and again, without stopping, without going back, until what once felt impossible becomes something you have already achieved. At the beginning, everything felt far away. The discipline you wanted, the focus you needed, the strength you believed you did not have. It all felt distant, like something you had to reach, something you had to find. But now, after everything you have gone through, something becomes clear. You were not missing anything. The power you were searching for was always there. It was just buried, covered by habits, covered by doubt, covered by patterns you repeated for too long. And step by step, you uncovered it. Not all at once, not in one big moment, but slowly, through your actions, through your choices, through your consistency. One day you notice it clearly. You wake up. There is no struggle, no long conversation in your mind, no hesitation. You get up, you begin, and it feels natural. Not forced, not difficult, just normal. That moment is quiet, but it shows you something powerful. You have changed, not just in what you do, but in who you are. As you move through your day, you feel it again. In the way you focus, in the way you handle challenges, in the way you respond to discomfort. Everything feels more stable, more controlled, more clear. You are not reacting the same way anymore. You are choosing. And that is the difference. Before, your actions were controlled by your feelings. Now, your actions are guided by your decisions. That shift changes everything. Later in the day, you face something that once would have stopped you. A challenge. Something that requires effort. Something that brings resistance. Before, you would have hesitated. You would have questioned yourself. You would have delayed. But now, you do not. You begin. You continue. You handle it. Not perfectly, but confidently. And once it is done, you pause. You realize something simple. That did not stop me. That realization stays with you because it shows you how far you have come. You are no longer the same person. You are stronger. Not in a loud way, but in a real way, a steady way. As the evening comes, you sit quietly. You think about your journey, not in detail, just in feeling. You remember where you started, the hesitation, the limits, the patterns that held you back. And you compare it to now, the clarity, the consistency, the control. And the difference is clear, not because everything is perfect, but because you are different. You are no longer waiting. You are no longer avoiding. You are no longer stopping at the same point. You are moving. You are continuing. You are growing. And that is the power you were looking for. It was not something you needed to find. It was something you needed to build. And now you have. As the days pass, this feeling becomes stronger, more stable, more natural. You do not think about it all the time. You simply live it. You follow your standard. You stay consistent. You act without hesitation. And that becomes your normal. Later one night, you sit in silence. No distractions, no pressure, just a quiet moment. And something becomes clear. You are no longer chasing growth. You are living it. You are no longer trying to become stronger. You are strong. Not in a way that removes all challenges, but in a way that allows you to face them, to move through them, to continue. Again and again, you understand something important. This is not the end. There is no final point, no moment where everything is complete. There is always more to build, more to learn, more to grow. But now, that does not feel overwhelming. It feels natural. Because you know how to continue. You know how to stay. You know how to move forward. That knowledge is your power. Not something outside you. Not something temporary. Something you have built. Something that stays with you. As the night comes to an end, your mind feels calm, clear, steady. There is no pressure to prove anything, no need to rush. You are moving at your pace. You are building your path. And that is enough. Because now you trust yourself. You trust your actions. You trust your process. And that trust removes doubt. It removes hesitation. It removes fear. You are not perfect. You are not finished. But you are ready. Ready to continue. Ready to grow. Ready to move beyond whatever comes next. Because you have already done it. You have already gone beyond the limits you once believed in, and that proves something. There is more inside you, always waiting not to be found, but to be awakened. And now you know how, through your actions, through your consistency, through your decision to keep going, again and again, until the version of you that once felt distant becomes the person you are. And from there, you continue. Not because you have to, but because it is who you are now. Someone who grows. Someone who moves forward. Someone who lives beyond limits. Every single day.